Now we're going to start talking about how to actually solve quadratic word problems. And there's two main types of problems that you could see. One of them is called projectile type problems, which is where somebody's either like throwing something up in the air or something's being shot into the air. And then there's some business type problems that might deal with like profits that a business is making, okay? So before we can actually get into these types of problems, we have to talk about, the different parts of the graph. So when something's thrown into the air, typically it's going to make kind of this shape in the air. So it kind of goes up and then it reaches that maximum height and then it falls back down to the ground, okay? And so we're going to talk about some important points that you're going to see in the graph. So whenever you graph this, notice it looks like a U. So that's why quadratic functions come into play here, is because when you graph a quadratic, it looks like a U, okay? And so the three main points that you're going to see when something's being thrown or shot into the air is the first point, which is the y-intercept in this problem. That's when like the time was 0. So at the very start of when it's thrown or shot into the air, this would actually show the initial height. So it could be thrown by somebody, so that would be like however high the thing is from the ground, however high their hand was. Or if it's shot into the air, sometimes it could be put on a platform and shot into the air, or this point could actually be all the way down here and it should be shot from the ground. And so the y-axis is how high it is from the ground. And so the x-axis you could actually kind of think of as the ground in these problems, okay? And so that point right there is going to show the initial height of whatever is being thrown, okay? This point right here at the very top should be pretty obvious. It's going to be however high it reaches. So the y value there would be the max height that it goes. And then the x value is your time, because the x-axis in these problems is usually going to be time. And so this point would tell you the time that it reaches its max height, essentially. And it's also going to tell you the maximum height that it reaches. And then it kind of goes up, it reaches that max height, and then gravity starts to take over, and then it falls back down to the ground. So this point right here, if you look at the x value, would tell you the time that it hits the ground. And so this one's going to have a number here, and then the y value will actually be 0 because the height above the ground is 0 there. Okay, so those are the three important points that you'll need to know about when something's being thrown or shot into the air, or projectile type problems. Okay, the other type of problem that you might see is dealing with businesses. So when it's talking about a business, the points will kind of change. So usually the x-axis is still going to represent your time, but this time the y-axis is usually going to represent the profits that they make. So the profit that a company makes is after a company or a business has kind of paid off all of their debts. This is the point where they start making money, okay? So the first point, that point right there, is going to represent the time that they actually start making a profit. So after all their debts are paid off, at that point, that's where kind of they break even, and now they're going to start earning money. And then at the very top here is representing the time that they make their max profit. So the x value will be the time. The y value will tell how much they made, or the most that they made at any one point in time. And then this last point right here is actually the sad point for the business. That would be the time that they stop making profit and they actually start going back into debt. So this part of the graph would be like them actually going back into debt.